50 years ago, Irish government at the time were secretly examining a study that had been done in relation to Northern Ireland. The government examined a secret study in the 1970s whereby Northern Ireland could become a United Nations trusteeship with its own United Nations force. The confidential study was so secret that one government memo warned that it must be done without consulting the UN or even Ireland's mission to the UN in New York. One potential model for the arrangement was the temporary administration of Jerusalem by the First Committee of the United Nations General Assembly. Confidential files released as part of the state papers revealed the special study conducted by a lad called Mahon Hayes, or a company, was sent by Attorney General Declan Costello to Foreign Affairs Minister Dr. Gareth Fitzgerald for his personal consideration. In a letter to Dr. Fitzgerald on January the 9th, 1976, 50 years this year, In a letter to Dr. Fitzgerald on January 9, 1976, Mr. Costello said he found the study very helpful. But then again, what else an Attorney General will usually Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael, they're not going to let down their own flock. The study was examined by government officials at a time when the sectarian violence in Northern Ireland threatened to spiral out of control. Attacks claimed almost 300 lives in 1976 as Northern Ireland was left reeling from the worst year of the Troubles since 1972, when almost 500 people died. Government officials were briefed that such a United Nations involvement in Northern Ireland would only become a possibility under certain specific circumstances. These could include a threatened loyalist takeover of the 6 counties, a British security withdrawal from Northern Ireland, or where sectarian killings reached such a peak that only a UN involvement was thought likely to end the bloodshed in Northern Ireland. It was noted that a UN trusteeship could only be sanctioned with the permission of the United Kingdom authorities. Under the terms of the study, it was examined whether Northern Ireland could apply for UN trusteeship under Article 12, United Nations Chapter. It is possible to envisage circumstances in which it might be desirable to place Northern Ireland under the trusteeship system. The study outlined a trusteeship arrangement might be considered the only practical way of dealing with an actual or threatened illegal loyalist takeover. Or it might be considered the best way to minimise loss of life in the event of a major breakdown in law and order, or in the context of a British decision to withdraw from Northern Ireland. Remember, all this was happening back in 1976, and Irish government knew what was going on. They were examining the study that had been carried out. But this has all been withheld from the Assembly in Northern Ireland. The study suggested that such a trusteeship arrangement could be implemented for a limited period of time, such as 10 years. It could be accompanied, or not, as thought appropriate by a United Nations force. However, the study noted that such a UN involvement in Northern Ireland would raise many problems. Foremost amongst these was that at the end of the trusteeship, Northern Ireland could gravitate towards a self-governing or even independent state. Irish officials were determined that the study should remain secret, of course, because Think back then, and they're still there to this day, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, always were underhanded doing things. They kept it secretly amongst themselves and remain doing so to this day. The Minister indicated clearly that such studies should be done without consultation with the United Nations authorities, and if possible without consultation with our mission to the UN, which was now always as sensitive as necessary to maintain absolute secrecy about aspects of such studies, the document said. The Attorney General echoed the critical importance of secrecy with such a study, and they still do today, guys. In a letter to Dr. Fitzgerald on June the 19th, 1975, Mr. Costello, the Attorney General, noted the importance of such studies in aiding government decision making. I appreciate that no action in this highly delicate area can be undertaken without government approval, he wrote. However, I think studies of the situation might help the evaluation of policies. Mr. Costello, the Attorney General, also noted it was apparent that there were concerns already within the nationalist community in Northern Ireland over such potential outcomes. We might come to the conclusion that an appropriate time a UN intervention should be sought, he wrote, when discussing this with John Hume and Austin Currie. Recently, they showed much greater interest in the idea when a possible role for the Irish Army was raised. The possibility of their participation in an administration under a trusteeship agreement was not discussed with them, funny enough. A subsequent draft trusteeship agreement for Northern Ireland was developed for the government, in which it was indicated that both the Irish and UK governments desired for Northern Ireland to come under temporary UN administration. That draft agreement outlined the arrangement was in the interest of the maintenance and furtherance of international peace and security that Northern Ireland should be placed under the international trusteeship system established by the United Nations. That's what Irish government were doing, that secretly examining a study that was done by themselves or their own cronies in reference to Northern Ireland back in 1976, guys. Okay, I just said a breath for bringing that to your attention, because I love bringing things like that to your people's attention. Okay, guys, and if you want to share the video with others, that's totally up to you what to do. Right, we'll talk to you later on, and enjoy the rest of the evening. Stay safe on the roads.